Meet Piper. Why was this little pup bowing to me like his life depended on it? The sun was loud and the day was bright over the farmer's market in Santa Monica, California. I was there for bread and tomatoes, nothing more. He stood between crates of oranges and a flower cart, small and dusty, and he kept dipping his head low, front legs bent, eyes locked on me as if he was saying, please. This dog kept bowing to me frantically again and again, tail stiff with hope and fear at the same time. People streamed around him like water around a rock. No one stopped. I could not move. He bowed deeper. His ears trembled. A vendor shooed him with a cloth and he flinched but did not run. The little dog held my gaze. He did not bark. He did not whine. He only bowed like a promise he would keep even if it hurt. Would you have stopped if a dog did that to you in the middle of the day? I took one step. He stepped back then bowed again slower, eyes searching my face. A child reached for him and the pup froze, then glanced at me like he was asking for permission to exist. My chest went tight in a way I hate admitting. I work from home. Most days I speak to no one. My name is Daniel and I have learned to keep my world small, but this small dog cracked it open like light through blinds. I crouched. The smell of peaches and cilantro pushed in from every side. The puppy lowered his head until his nose nearly brushed my shoe. He was thin but not broken. He was scared but not gone. I could feel the tiny shake in his shoulders from where I knelt. I put my hand out, palm down, nothing fancy, just there. He held the bow, breathing fast, counting my fingers with his eyes like each one might be a reason to trust. Have you ever seen a stray pup act like he was praying? A passerby muttered that dogs do tricks for food, but this wasn't a trick. There was no treat in my hand. There was only a promise I had not said out loud yet. Pup edged forward then stopped, ears twitching at a burst of laughter from a juice stand. He looked back at me, he dipped low again, he asked again. I felt the market blur out until only he was in focus. I spoke before I knew I would. It came out soft. Hey buddy, it's okay, you picked me, didn't you? He blinked slow like yes. He inhaled like he was about to step into a new life. I kept still, letting him write the next move. Around us bags rustled, shoes scuffed, a cart squeaked. The world kept going. He leaned forward an inch, nose hovering over my fingers, breath warm and quick. Then the little companion stiffened, ears tilting toward the alley between the herb stall and the fish cooler like he remembered something he needed to show me. He bowed one more time, even lower than before, held it, and then spun and slipped into the narrow, shadowed gap. He slipped into the alley like a shadow, and I felt my chest tight. The little pup vanished between stacked boxes and a dripping cooler. I pushed past a man selling herbs and followed. The air changed, damp, sour, heavy with old fish. My eyes caught movement ahead, a tail disappearing deeper into the narrow space. Why was the stray pup leading me? And where? The noise of the market dulled behind me. I could hear his paws scuffing the concrete. Every few steps he stopped, turned, dipped his head low in that same frantic bow, then darted forward again. It wasn't random. He wanted me to follow. Would you have gone after a small dog into a place like that with no idea what waited inside? The gap opened into a courtyard behind the stalls. Empty crates, broken pallets, puddles of water catching sunlight. He stood in the middle, ears back, still bowing, still trembling, eyes locked on me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. I stepped closer. The little companion skittered sideways, then circled behind a stack of torn cardboard. And then I saw it. A second pup, smaller, weaker, barely moving, curled tight against the wall, ribs showing with each shallow breath. My bowing pup nudged the weaker one with his nose, whined once, then dipped low in that same bow. But this time it wasn't for me. It was for him. I froze. This wasn't just an abandoned puppy begging for food. This was a loyal puppy begging for someone to save his friend. The sight cut through me. The world blurred into colors I couldn't name. It was as if this little dog had been shouting all along, not just me, help us both. My heart pounded. I didn't even know if the second pup was alive. I bent down slowly, palms open, feeling the rough pavement under my knees. The bowing pup didn't run. He stayed low, eyes never leaving mine, as if he was offering me a deal. Take us or leave us, but don't betray us. My voice cracked before I could stop it. Okay, I'm here, I'll take you, both of you. The weaker pup gave a faint sigh, like a bubble rising to the surface of still water. The brave pup touched his nose to my hand, almost like he was sealing a promise. And in that broken courtyard with two stray pups at my feet, I realized this wasn't just chance. This was a choice, his and mine, and it would change everything. I reached forward, but the question burned in my chest. Could I carry them both out of here before it was too late? I scooped the weaker pup into my arms and he felt almost weightless. His tiny body trembled against me, every rib pressing sharp through his fur. The bowing pup, my stubborn little guide, circled close, whining, pawing at my leg as if to hurry me along. This wasn't just any stray pup. This was a loyal puppy who had dragged me through a market full of people just to save his friend. I pressed the frail body against my chest, feeling the faintest beat so fragile I thought it might vanish. My throat went dry. How long had these two been out here, hidden behind boxes while life bustled only feet away? An abandoned puppy left invisible in plain sight, and another risking everything to pull someone close enough to notice. It was unbearable to think what would have happened if I'd kept walking. The loyal pup darted ahead toward the sunlight of the market, then turned, bowing once more, urging me to follow. I shifted the fragile one carefully and stepped forward. People glanced, some frowned, but no one stopped. To them it was just a man carrying a small dog, nothing more. But to me this was a heartbeat slipping through my fingers and a brave pup refusing to let his friend die unseen. I tried to flag a cab. The driver shook his head, waving me off when he saw the shaking little companion in my arms. Another cab slowed, then sped away. The bowing pup barked, sharp and desperate, as if scolding the world for ignoring us, for ignoring him, for ignoring them. I crouched, looking him in the eyes. "You're not alone anymore," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was talking to him or myself. He blinked, dipped low, and pressed his nose against the paw of the weaker pup like a silent vow. This little four-legged friend had chosen to fight for more than his own survival. He was showing me what never betray really meant. The market noise roared back in, a reminder of how easy it was to miss something sacred. I clutched the frail pup closer, the smell of dust and fear mixing with my own sweat. The other dog pawed at my shoe, bowing low again before dashing a few feet toward the street. He stopped, looked back, tail stiff, eyes burning with urgency. I felt the weight of his plea heavier than the fragile body in my arms. I had no plan, no transport, no clear way out, but I had two pups looking at me like I was the only chance they had left, and in that moment it no longer mattered what I thought I could handle. It only mattered if I could keep them alive until we found a safe place. The bowing pup barked once, sharp as a command, then took off down the street. And I had no choice but to run after him, carrying his brother, praying I could keep up. I held the weaker pup tight against my chest, his breath so faint I had to press my cheek to his muzzle just to feel it. The stronger one, my bowing guide, circled my legs, whining, then darting toward the street as if pulling me forward step by step. He wasn't just a stray pup anymore. He was a loyal puppy, making sure I didn't falter. Every look from him was a command: don't stop, don't give up. We broke out of the alley back into the sunlit market. Vendors stared, some shaking their heads, some muttering. To them it was only another small dog. Another problem, not theirs, but to me it was a heartbeat slipping away and a brave pup refusing to be invisible. I waved down another cab, clutching the weak little companion like glass. The driver slowed, frowned, then sped off the moment he saw the furry pup in my arms. Another one passed without even looking. The stronger pup barked sharply, startling a woman carrying apples. He bowed again, pressing his chest low, then spun back toward me, tail stiff with urgency. It felt like he was saying, "If you give up, he dies." I whispered, "I won't." Though my throat was dry and my knees weak. "Would you have kept trying if no one wanted to help, if the world turned its back while a life slipped through your hands?" I spotted an old delivery van idling by the curb. The driver leaned out, cigarette dangling, watching me. "What's wrong with him?" he asked, nodding at the limp pup in my arms. "He's dying," I said, my voice breaking in a way I hadn't planned. For a long second, the driver just stared. Then he sighed, flicked the cigarette, and motioned me in. "Get in quick." The stronger pup leapt onto the step like he'd been waiting for the word. I climbed in after cradling the frail body against me. The loyal dog settled at my feet, eyes burning holes into mine as if checking if I really meant it. And in that rattling van with two orphan puppies depending on me, I knew this was no longer about choice. It was about whether I could keep a promise that had never been spoken. The van lurched forward, the city blurring past. I pressed the smaller pup closer, whispering his name before I knew it. "Piper," I breathed. The stronger one lifted his head at the sound as if he understood. And just then the frail pup stirred, his paw twitching once against my chest, enough to make me believe we still had a chance. But belief wasn't enough. We still had to make it in time. The van jolted over a pothole and I tightened my grip on the frail little pup in my arms. His head lolled weakly against my shoulder, but the faint warmth of his breath told me he was still fighting. Beside me, the loyal dog sat pressed against my leg, his eyes never leaving my face. Every time I looked down, he dipped his chest low again, almost like a bow, as if reminding me of the promise I hadn't dared to speak aloud. The driver muttered something about traffic, but I barely heard him. All I could think of was how fragile this abandoned puppy felt, how close his tiny heart was to fatting. Would you believe that a four-legged friend could stare at you in silence and still command you to keep going? That's what the brave pup was doing now. His whole body tense, every glance at me a demand to move faster, to do more. We pulled up in front of my apartment building, a place I had always thought of as silent, empty, too big for one person. Now it felt like a race against time. The driver opened the side door and muttered, "Good luck, man." I whispered, thanks, though my voice broke on the word. The strong pup jumped down first, then spun back toward me, barking sharply as if to say, "Don't waste another second." I hurried up the steps, fumbling my keys, almost dropping them as the frail pup stirred weakly in my arms. Inside, the air felt too still, too quiet. I laid him gently on a blanket and rushed for water, setting a shallow bowl on the floor. The loyal puppy sniffed it, then looked at me, bowing again, urging me to help his friend first. I dipped my fingers in the water and touched them to the weak pup's lips, praying for even the smallest reaction. There was a twitch, just the faintest lick, and my heart leapt. The stronger canine wedged softly, circling, nudging me closer as though he knew we were balanced on the edge of hope. I opened a can of food, the smell sharp and heavy, but the frail one didn't stir. The loyal dog barked, then nudged the bowl, then barked again, not at me but at his silent friend. It was heartbreaking and holy all at once, watching one stray pup refuse to give up on another. I whispered, "You're not alone anymore." As I cradled the frail body closer, rocking him like a child, the loyal pup rested his chin on my knee, his eyes searching mine with a plea I couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a vow being written right there on my floor between two pups who had only ever known abandonment. And as the weaker one gave a tiny shiver and the loyal dog pressed closer to me, I realized this was only the beginning of a fight that might break all three of us. Because surviving the street was one thing. Surviving what came next would be another. Night fell heavy in that apartment, and the silence carried every sound. The frail pup lay curled on the blanket, his breath shallow, each one a fragile thread I was terrified to see break. Beside him, the loyal dog refused to rest. He paced, circled, then lowered himself again into that strange bow, chest pressed to the floor, eyes locked on me. He wasn't begging anymore, he was commanding me not to give up. I filled a dropper with water, trembling as I touched it to the weak pup's lips. A faint swallow, then another. My heart thudded so hard it hurt. I whispered, "That's it, little one, keep going." Though my voice cracked in a way I hadn't let anyone hear in years, the loyal canine pressed closer, tail flicking stiffly, nose brushing my wrist as if to guide my hand steady. Would you believe that a dog could be stronger than the man trying to save him? Hours crawled by. I dozed sitting upright against the couch. I have one arm around the frail pup, the other resting on the brave pup's back. He didn't move all night, just leaned into me like a weight I needed. Every so often he dipped low again, bowing even in sleep like he was reminding himself to keep the vigil. It was heartbreaking to see how one stray pup carried more loyalty than most people I'd ever known. At dawn, the room glowed pale gold. I felt a twitch against my chest, the frail puppy's paw moving, tiny but deliberate. His eyes fluttered, and for a heartbeat I saw life spark where I had feared only loss. The loyal pup sprang up, barking sharp, spinning in circles like he knew a miracle when he saw one. It wasn't much, but it was more than yesterday. I placed the weaker little companion closer to the food bowl. His head wobbled, his tongue barely brushed the surface, but it was enough to make my eyes sting. The brave pup licked his face once, then turned and pressed his nose against my palm, holding it there. It felt like gratitude, but also like warning. Don't stop now. I had promised myself I wouldn't get attached, that I would just help them through the night. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. I was already gone. 2 orphan puppies had written themselves into a place I thought I had locked away forever. And as the frail one gave a weak whine that sounded almost like a plea, I realized I would have to fight harder than ever. Because if sunrise had given us a flicker of hope, the real test was still coming. By the second morning, my apartment no longer felt like the quiet box I'd lived in for years. It sounded alive. The weaker pup stirred on the blanket, giving a faint whine, and the loyal dog rushed over, tail thumping, nose nudging his friend awake. I had thought I'd be teaching them how to survive, but it was the other way around. These 2 stray pups were teaching me how not to give up. The frail little companion lifted his head for the first time, shaky and unsure. But it was enough to make the brave pup bark like he'd just witnessed a miracle. I laughed out loud, the sound startling even me. It had been years since laughter felt natural. The loyal puppy pressed against my leg as if claiming a share of that joy while his friend blinked up at us with tired eyes that still carried fight. I tried to feed him again. This time a tiny lick of food stayed on his tongue. The young dog chewed once slow, then collapsed back against the blanket. It wasn't much, but it was something. The strong pup circles, both whining, then dropping low into that strange bow once more, his chest against the floor as if saying, "See, he's coming back." Would you have believed a rescued puppy could celebrate a single lick of food like it was victory itself? That's what I saw that morning, hope stitched into the smallest movement. The loyal canine wagged his tail for the first time since I met him, the sound of it against the floor like a drum beat of determination. I poured fresh water and both pups crept closer. The frail one managed a few sips. The other, never taking his eyes off him, drank quickly, then leaned in to lick his friend's face as if urging him to try again. 2 orphan puppies who had survived the streets now pushing each other toward life right there in my living room. Something shifted in me as I watched. I wasn't just helping dogs anymore. I was letting them into my home, into my chest, into the parts of me I thought had been closed off forever. The loyal pup pressed his head against my knee again, not bowing this time but resting. It felt like trust, like belonging. I looked at the weaker pup, his eyes half shut but still watching us, and I whispered, "You're safe now, both of you." But even as I said it, I knew safety was fragile because hope is a dangerous thing. You cling to it, but you also fear how quickly it can vanish. And as the weaker pup coughed once, his tiny body shuddering under the effort, I felt the air tight. The fight wasn't over, it was only getting harder. By the third night I couldn't ignore it anymore. The weaker pup's breaths were too shallow, his tiny chest fluttering like paper in the wind. Every time he coughed, my stomach dropped. The loyal dog barked at me, urgent and sharp, then pressed his head to the blanket, dipping into that familiar bow. It wasn't just pleading, it was an order, do something now. I wrapped the frail little companion in a towel and scooped him up. The stronger pup trotted close, never leaving my side, his nails clicking on the floor with every step. Would you have carried a sick, rescued puppy into the night not knowing if you'd make it in time? That's what I was doing, praying my arms wouldn't give out as I rushed down the stairs. The cab ride felt endless. The weaker orphan puppy whimpered once, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. The brave pup sat pressed against my leg, whining low, his tail stiff as a rod. He wouldn't look away from his friend, not once. I whispered over and over, "Hold on, just hold on." When we reached the clinic, the smell of antiseptic hit me hard. A vet rushed forward, eyes scanning the bundle in my arms. "This pup's critical," she said, guiding us through swinging doors. The loyal dog tried to follow, barking, but they stopped him at the threshold. He twisted back toward me, bowing again, eyes burning with fear. I knelt, cupping his face. "I'll stay with him, I promised, I swear." Inside, the vet moved fast. Oxygen mask, fluids, gentle hands pressing against the fragile chest. I stood frozen, heart hammering, while monitors beeped like a cruel clock counting down. The doctor muttered about dehydration, starvation, infections from being an abandoned puppy on the street too long. My throat closed at every word. I thought of how many people had walked past those two stray pups at the market and never noticed, how close I had come to being one of them. The vet looked up. It'll be hours before we know if he stabilizes. He's fighting, but he's very weak. I nodded, though I barely heard. Through the glass I saw the loyal canine packing the waiting room, bowing again and again toward the closed door, refusing to rest until he saw his friend. I leaned against the wall, hands trembling, and whispered to no one, "Please don't take him from us." Because in that sterile white room it no longer felt like I was saving two stray pups, it felt like they were saving me. And as the monitor skipped, the smallest sound escaped the weaker pup's throat. A thin cry, barely more than a breath. It was enough to freeze everyone in place, and it was enough to make me believe we might still have a chance. The hours in that clinic felt like years. I sat in the waiting room with the loyal pup pressed against my knee, his body vibrating with every sound from behind the treatment door. Every few minutes, he lowered into that same desperate bow, chest flat to the tile, eyes fixed on me like he was begging for an answer I didn't have. Would you believe a rescued puppy could carry so much weight on his shoulders as if the whole world depended on him? When the vet finally stepped out, I stopped breathing. "He's stable for now," she said softly. "Still weak, but he's holding on." I felt my chest crack open with relief. The brave pup barked once, spun in a circle, then jumped onto my lap as if he understood every word. But then the vet added, "It'll be a long recovery. He'll need more than medicine. He'll need you." They let me back in. The frail orphan puppy lay on a heated pad, an IV taped to his thin leg, his eyes barely open. I knelt beside him, reaching out slowly. He twitched, then gave the faintest lick against my fingertip. It was the smallest gesture, but it felt like a vow to keep fighting. The loyal dog pressed his nose to the glass and wed until they finally let him in too. He ran straight to his friend, licked his ears, then bowed low, holding the pose for what felt like forever. I sat there watching them, and something inside me shifted. A dog without a name is like a story without an ending. I had already called the bowing pup Piper, the one who had chosen me in the market. But this frail little companion deserved more than the weak one. He deserved his own place in the world. I leaned close, my hand resting on his tiny chest. "You're not just surviving anymore," I whispered. "You're Finn." The loyal canine lifted his head at the sound, tail thumping once like he approved. Finn blinked at me, a flicker of life in those tired eyes, and in that moment he was no longer just an abandoned puppy. He was a fighter with a name, and I had just promised him a future. The vet smiled faintly. "Names matter. Animals fight harder when they're loved." I believed her, because even in that fragile room with machines humming and medicine dripping, Finn looked at me like he knew exactly who he was now. I stroked Piper's back, feeling his muscles still tight with worry. "You saved him," I told him quietly. "You both saved me." The brave pup leaned against my leg, sighing deep as if he finally allowed himself to rest. But as Finn coughed once, his body trembling under the strain, I realized the hardest test was still ahead. Because a name was a promise, and promises are not meant to be broken. I will never forget the moment Finn collapsed again. One minute he was lifting his head, weak but awake, and the next his body sagged, eyes rolling half shut, his tiny chest barely moving. The monitor screeched and my blood went cold. Piper barked frantically, circling the table, then bowing over and over as if forcing me to act. Would you have believed two small dogs could hold your whole world in their paws? The vet rushed in, hands steady, voice calm but urgent. "Stay back," she ordered, checking the IV, adjusting the oxygen. I froze against the wall, my fists clenched, my breath stuck in my throat. Piper barked louder, tail stiff like a soldier refusing retreat, his whole body braiding with panic. Every second felt like an eternity. I whispered Finn's name over and over like a prayer. "Come on, little pup, don't give up. Finn, Finn." The machine beeped wildly, then steadied. The frail rescued puppy gave a shudder. Then the faintest cry slipped from his throat. The vet exhaled. "He's back," she said, softer this time. I collapsed into the chair, burying my face in my hands, shaking with a mix of relief and fear. Piper pressed against me, wed low, and for the first time since I'd met him, he stopped bowing. Instead, he rested his head on my knee as if saying, "We did it, but don't let go now." I leaned close to Finn, touching his paw gently. "You don't get to leave," I whispered. "Not now, not after all this." The young dog stirred, his paw twitching against my fingers enough to make my heart explode with hope. The loyal puppy licked his face, then curled tightly against him, their bodies pressed together like two halves of the same promise. The vet placed a hand on my shoulder. "He's fragile, but this is the turning point. If he makes it through tonight, his chances rise." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. All I could do was keep my hand on Finn and my other hand on Piper, feeling the bond that tied the three of us together. They weren't just stray pups anymore. They were mine. But as the clinic lights flickered and the night deepened, I realized how close we had come to losing him, and I couldn't stop asking myself the same question. What if the fight wasn't over yet? The first time Finn stood on his own legs, I thought my chest would burst. It was shaky, barely more than a wobble, but his paws pressed against the clinic floor, and he lifted his head like a small dog refusing to surrender. Piper barked wildly, spinning in circles, then dropped into his signature bow right in front of him, as if cheering him on, as if saying, "You did it, brother." The vet smiled, and even the techs clapped softly. But for me it was more than a milestone. It was proof that a once abandoned puppy had chosen life again. I crouched down, arms open, and Finn stumbled toward me. He fell halfway, legs collapsing under him, but Piper nudged his side, steadying him until he made it those last few steps. I caught him against my chest, tears slipping down my face before I even realized they were there. The loyal pup pressed close too, sandwiching us together, 3 beating hearts against one another. It felt like a promise sealed in fur and breath. Would you have believed a rescued puppy this week could rise after everything? That's the moment I knew people needed to see, because it wasn't just survival, it was victory. The kind of victory only a four-legged friend could deliver. The vet leaned in, her voice softer now. He'll grow stronger each day. You brought him here just in time. I looked at Finn, then at Piper, and whispered, no, they brought me here just in time. Because the truth was clear, I hadn't saved them. They had saved me from silence, from emptiness, from the weight of being alone. When the clinic finally cleared us to go home, I carried Finn in my arms, Piper trotting proudly by my side. People turned their heads in the waiting room, eyes catching on this once weak orphaned puppy who now stood a chance. And Piper, bowing once to the crowd as if to thank them for watching, made strangers smile through tears. Back outside, the California sun hit us full in the face. The three of us stood there breathing the same warm air, alive together. And I realized this wasn't just a rescue story. This was the start of a family. But families are tested not in their first moment of joy, but in what they carry forward. And as I held Finn tighter and Piper barked at the sky, I knew the real journey was only beginning. Some stories don't end where you expect them to. I thought this would be about saving 2 abandoned puppies from the street, but it turned into something much bigger. Piper, the brave pup who kept bowing until someone listened, showed me what loyalty really looks like. And Finn, the little companion who fought back from the edge, taught me the quiet strength of refusing to give up. I used to think I lived alone, but the truth is I was just waiting for them. Now every morning I wake up to 2 rescued puppies breathing beside me, alive, safe, and full of possibility. They remind me that love comes in the moments when you least expect it. On a noisy market street, in a desperate bow, in a fragile heartbeat that decides to keep going. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Because without people who step in, without voices willing to share these stories, so many dogs like Finn and Piper never get their chance. And caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility, it's pet care, it's a promise that once they're safe, they'll never be left behind again. I believe these 2 pups were sent to me for a reason. Not to remind me of the past, but to show me how much future we can build together. Every wag of their tails, every small victory, every time Piper bows just to make me laugh, it all tells me the same thing: dogs never betray. And maybe that's why it hurts so deeply when we see them abandoned, because we know they would never do the same to us. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share. Every share spreads awareness. Every comment inspires action. Every view brings another dog closer to a second chance. Be part of this chain of hope. Join our brave Paws family. Be their voice, be their hope.